about the old hotel behind us.
Okay. The Old Smithey Hotel was built actually in 1891, and at that particular time it was known as the Wilkesboro Hotel. And in the 1890s there was continuous growth here in the southern Appalachians, as well as there was throughout the United States in a time of surge of economic prosperity. And the hotel was put in place at that particular time, and sort of the end of the turn of the century, or the beginning of the new century in the early 1900s, it finally fell in some economic hardships. And at that particular time, a young vendor would sell his wares on the courthouse lawn over here. Many people might call him today a trader or a tinker, but he would bring his mule-drawn cart or horse-drawn cart on the square of the old Wilkes Courthouse, which was built in 1902, sell his wares. Turns out his name was Nikerd Smithy, which is short for Nikerd. Nikerd Smithy made a proposition to the owners of the Wilkesboro Hotel, and he wound up borrowing the only money they say he ever borrowed in his entire life, a grand total sum of $3,800 to buy the Wilkesboro Hotel, and of course it remained the Smithey Hotel for over a century from that point. Today the Smithey Hotel contains several different businesses, such as a sports grill and Mother Earth Foods, and also a fine dining section, a couple other shops that are in there as well. What's interesting is Nikerd Smithy became the first documented millionaire in Wilkes County. From 1906, when he and his wife, a lady he met from Catawba County, her name was Hattie Little, became Hattie Smithy, and they raised their two daughters for nearly a half a century and ran the hotel and led to a department store chain, including 17 department stores of the Smithy, under the Smithy name. Nikerd Smithy passed away in 1953, and because there were a shortage of large buildings in town, Nikerd Smithy's funeral was also held in the Smithy Hotel.
Now that kind of leads me to ask you about the legends and ghost stories of the hotel.
In the mid-1990s, the Smithy family, which at that particular time was passed to the Kyle Hayes family, the heirs, decided to sell the property at the Smithy Hotel. And it was purchased by a chiropractor in town, Dr. Ronald Cohn. Dr. Cohn opened the shops that you presently note in the Smithy Hotel today. And at that particular time, it's interesting that ghost tales and legends started to emerge, such to the extent that today we now offer candlelight ghost tours throughout the summer season in the Smithy Hotel.
How would you sum up or describe the architecture of Wilkesboro? I mean, I know the courthouse is probably what, federal period?
It is. The courthouse was built in the early 1900s, and of course it has a very distinctive architecture. If you travel through courthouses in western North Carolina, you'll notice that a lot of them look alike in the small towns throughout northwest North Carolina. Some of them have been converted to heritage museums, some of them are still in use, while some of them have burned down. A few years back, the courthouse that was built with a similar design in Taylorsville, North Carolina, burned to the ground. And I actually grew up over there and remember seeing that sad but historic occasion. But Old Wilkes Incorporated took an opportunity here to step in and make the commitment for preserving the Wilkes Heritage Museum for future generations. And it was a good thing.
But I'm noticing really an eclectic style, architectural style up and down Main Street. This looks like a Sears kid home.
Let me get the date on that, I think.
Fine. Okay, go.
Another architectural style that you'll see in downtown Wilkesboro will be pre-Civil War. The Brown Coles house just down the street was actually the sign of a meeting between General Stoneman and the Coles family, who talked General Stoneman out of burning the town during Stoneman's raid in April of 1865. Another aspect that you'll see downtown in Wilkesboro include a hint of antebellum architecture. If you'll notice the old Presbyterian chapel that's downtown in Wilkesboro, it was built around 1850. It's one of the oldest standing Presbyterian churches in the state of North Carolina, in fact. In addition to that, the old Wilkes Jail was built from 1859 and completed in 1860. The old Wilkes Jail was actually standing, and it was the jail that was in use at the time that Tom Dooley was arraigned in the very famous story of the legend of Tom Dooley that took place here in Wilkes County in 1866. Another building that's quite old in downtown Wilkesboro is the Smithey Hotel. In 1891 it was built, and you'll notice that the characters of the architecture are designed in the late Victorian period. There are other houses in downtown Wilkesboro today that are standing that bear the Victorian style, which is fairly prominent in the older houses. In addition to that, there is a colonial building on site that has been moved here, and it's the Robert Cleveland House, which is a log cabin built in the 1770s, which is located directly behind the old Wilkes Jail.
I want to back up just a little bit because I had an interview with Junior Johnson in the courthouse.
Yeah.
And I shot that whole display in there.
Okay, cool.
Just touch briefly on maybe his trial there in the courthouse.
Okay, the story goes that Junior Johnson was
here.
Okay. Junior Johnson was actually finally caught in the 1950s, and a very famous trial took place here. And it consisted of Junior Johnson with Judge Hayes, who heard the case. Johnson J. Hayes, who also was an author later in life, but many people knew him in Wilkes County as the moonshiner judge because he convicted so many who were caught in moonshining. And as it turns out, Junior Johnson did go off to the penitentiary and have to do time, which he was later pardoned by President Reagan during Reagan's term of office for his crime of moonshining, which was, of course, at that time a federal penalty.
And because of the notes, I shot a couple of stills.
You probably got the same stuff too from Junior, didn't you?
Yeah, pretty much, and that'll compliment you. But I have shot a couple of stills, and I wanted to ask you, why Wilkes County? Why is it known for moonshining and no other county? I can ask my folks back in Oklahoma, and I say Wilkes County, and they say moonshine. Why?
One reason there's several reasons that moonshining. I'll wait till that truck goes.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, that was a tough one there. There's several reasons that moonshining there are several reasons that moonshining rose as a legal occupation here in Wilkes County. First of all, Wilkes County was settled by a high percentage at settlement time of Scotch-Irish, who called the beverage poitín, which is the Gaelic term for moonshine, with them from the hills of Scotland and Ireland to America. And when they found Wilkes County in this fertile valley of the Yadkin River, they found it was optimum for growing corn, which later would be a prime ingredient to produce mash, which would make moonshine product. What happened here was in the 1940s, during the times of hard economic times, and even back before that in the period of the Great Depression, people were looking for sources in which they could yet get through the hard times, and it turns out that moonshine became very profitable. Because of the fertile valley, the ability to grow corn, and the fact that we had a lot of people who were unemployed, it seemed to be fertile ground for producing moonshine, and that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, the technology for producing moonshine involved getting cars to get away from agents of the Internal Revenue Service and the alcohol tax and firearms, as it was illegal to make moonshine whiskey and sell it because it was in violation of tax laws. And at this particular time, the revenuers' cars, as they called them, just didn't have the horsepower that the local citizenry was able to produce. And so the ingenuity of the backwoodsmen living on the farms along the Yadkin River Valley and making moonshine rapidly advanced over the top of the horsepower of the cars of the early law enforcement officials. And this is where the legends were born, and this is where Junior Johnson and company and many other people that led to modern day NASCAR developed the skills to build the engines and to run through the countryside while they're being chased by the revenuers.
That's great.
Did I get anything? Is that
Oh, you got it all there. That's good. All right, we're getting close.
okay?
Are you still okay?
Yeah, I'm physically sane.
Okay. What's and again for my own use, why North Wilkesboro? Why did we come up with another township like that? Would the railroad or the river separate them, or why did we come up with two towns?
In the small towns along the Yadkin River Valley, many times you would see two towns emerge on opposite sides of the river. This was the case with Elkin and Jonesville, also the case with Wilkesboro and North Wilkesboro. It's interesting, and most people around here certainly know. That's
Pick it up, it's interesting.
okay.
Let me just stop for a second.
Okay.
He's gonna make off. And anytime.
It's interesting. Most everybody around here knows and has observed that the town of Wilkesboro has tended to vote Republican, and the town of North Wilkesboro has tended to vote Democrat. So we've had this kind of polarization happen in the towns, interestingly, along the Yadkin River, and it seems to be somewhat the case. But we are seeing towns work together in many ways that we maybe didn't a few years back, especially with such aspects as tourism and certain projects which will maybe bring tourists into the area.
Okay. Now, a couple of things I want to ask you about.
I touched my nose there. Maybe that wasn't a good thing, but
Oh, I didn't see that. You want to pick up the last part?
yeah, let me get that again. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Still rolling?
Yeah.
Okay.
But small towns are starting to work together along the Yadkin River Valley, and probably something that can really impact tourism for the future, and that is tourism and economic development. So there are some bright rays of hope for the towns such as Elkin, Jonesville, Wilkesboro, North Wilkesboro working together for the economic benefit of all.
Brief comments about Glenn's Tasty Freeze. What's the history on that?
You know, I don't know Glenn's.
Oh, don't worry about it.
No.
I can ask somebody else.
Okay.
All right. What about the frescoes? Is it Episcopal Church or Presbyterian Church?
Episcopal Church.
Okay.
On top of the hill here in downtown Wilkesboro, overlooking the town, is a very interesting site for tourists to visit. We have the fresco of St. Paul depicted on the Damascus Road, and the fresco was done by Benjamin Long. Benjamin Long is an artist living in the Asheville area who has done several frescoes throughout the area. It's interesting now that the frescoes have been followed up in this particular region of western and central North Carolina with a fresco trail, which includes stops for tourists at each of the sites where frescoes are displayed.
He was an Ardell native, right?
Yes.
Statesville? Okay.
Yeah, you may say that.
No, that's okay. What about major industry? I've shot some exteriors of Tyson. Can you give me a couple comments about that?
Poultry was one of those innovations which was reputed to come out of the fact that moonshiners were trying to search for economy and other ways, options to make a decent way of life and a legal way of life. And following the moonshine period and heyday, or on the tail end of it, let's say, a local family, the Lovett family, did come up with a very sophisticated way of producing poultry in large amounts and ultimately processing that through frozen processing methods. And this led to the Holly Farms industries, which really blossomed in 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and finally merged with a large poultry giant today, I think Springdale, Arkansas, which is Tyson Foods.
Great. How would you describe the people of Wilkes County? Is that a fair question?
Okay. Yeah. What's been intrigued me about the people of Wilkes County are a couple of things: ingenuity, resourcefulness, and able to invent and work together and tightly form teams for a common purpose.
Can you give me that one more time? I had a truck.
Okay. What's always intrigued me about Wilkes County citizens is that they've always been able to work together in a spirit of teamwork to achieve a common goal. And this has been evident not only in the Wilkes Heritage Museum, which is behind me here as a grassroots effort, but such projects in the county such as the Yadkin River Greenway. Wilkes Playmakers who now operate in Benton Hall across the Yadkin River there in North Wilkesboro. We have a lot of projects going on here in industry too that have really come to national level. One would be, as we just mentioned, the the Tyson foods, or the poultry industry, which now today's Tyson Foods in the area primarily. Let me back up on that. I got a better way of saying that.
Okay.
Just cut that out.
Still rolling.
What's always intrigued me about the ingenuity of Wilkes County, well, you got the part with the grassroots. I'll just do the industries.
You can pick it up.
Some very prominent national industries have grown up here in Wilkes County too, such as the poultry industry and also Lowe's companies. In the 1950s, a very young, bright, energetic man came to the forefront called Carl Buchan of the Lowe's companies operations, and began to work with Lowe's officials to make it into an industrial giant. I mean, it's not, let me back up on that. Carl Buchan came to Wilkes County and under his leadership had the vision to make Lowe's companies become a national powerhouse. And over the last 30 to 40 years, Lowe's companies has done just that. They actually have an exhibit in the Heritage Museum on the history of Lowe's. And what's interesting is that Lowe's was able to empower their employees to be a part of the process. Many of the original employees bought stock in the company and thus ownership in what they were doing. A stroke of genius and teamwork in combination to make a national giant.
All right, what's the current state of Wilkesboro and Wilkes County, in your opinion? Where are we going?
In the loss of economic jobs from the textile industry, Wilkes County is now looking for different avenues. And such task force that have been formed out there, such as Vision 2020, the Wilkesboro TDA, Tourism Development Authority, and the Wilkes Chamber of Commerce Tourism Board, and other initiatives that are taking place with the wine growing industry, viticulture as it's called, and tourism, these in combination have breathed new life to Wilkes County economy. And I think the trend is going to be Wilkes County can very much become a center for tourism. And its growth potential is enormous here because we have the resources of a 4-lane Highway 421, we have the mountains, we have the people who are very industrious and very creative and work together well in teams and step out of the box and volunteer for many projects on their own accord. In Wilkes County, when you combine all the resources, the natural resources, the Yadkin River Valley, the people, the grassroots volunteer organizations that work here, and put all this together in one package, you have an ingredient for success.